Hi, welcome to the channel. This is Alexandra Masson from Masson Design Build, and today we are working on Simplicity 8982. I don't know if you have seen a couple of people wearing this top, but this top is hot and I want it. I want it so bad, I'm going to do it in the same color. I got, so we're going to be doing view C. As in cat, and I got this awesome ochre knit from Joann's on sale because you cannot pass up a sale. So let's go through the pieces that we need. We are going to start with pattern piece number 5, and this is the front, and you're going to cut this on the fold. Then pattern piece number 6, and this is the back, cut one on fold. You have the neckband, cut 1. Then we have the sleeve, cut 2. And then you have the sleeve band, kind of like that awesome sleeve band right there. This is it. So cut 2. All right, so we cut our pattern, we put in our notches, and the pattern calls for a 5/8 seam allowance. So go ahead and match your notches at the shoulders, pin, and I also like to stabilize the seam at the shoulders, especially on knits when things tend to stretch over time. So I usually just grab a little piece of usually like swimwear clear elastic, but I don't have any, so I go ahead and pin this right at the shoulder seam, right where the stitching is going to go. Go ahead and do that, and do that on both sides. Pin it first, and then add this, but it definitely helps with the stretch. And I'm definitely going to go ahead and serge my my seams. You don't need to do this. It is a knit. It's not going to unravel on you, but I do like to do this. It just looks a little bit nicer. So go ahead and stitch both shoulders. We went ahead and stabilized them with 5/8 seam allowance. Don't forget to back stitch at the front and at the end. Again, to lock in your stitches, so we'll go ahead and do that now. We are going to go ahead and sew the shoulders, but I am going to be doing a straight stitch. But if you are doing anything horizontal on knits, you need to do a zigzag stitch. If you don't, your shoulders are going to pop. The only reason I'm getting away with that, it is because I am going to serge my seams. I repeat, you need to do a zigzag stitch for anything horizontal with knits, or your seams will pop. Now that we stitched our front and back together, we are going to go ahead and put that off to the side. We're going to grab the neckband, which is piece number 8, and we are going to go ahead and match the notches, and we are going to stitch 5/8 seam allowance, and then we're gonna fold the neckline and press it. Let's do that now. Okay, now that you got your band all stitched up, you're gonna go ahead with right sides together. We're gonna pin the band to the shirt. So start with the back. You have those 2 notches right there. Make sure that you match all of those notches, and then you pin all the way around. You may have to stretch your garment a little in a couple of spots just to get the notches to all fit. Especially in some of these spots where we have notches that are for the seams. Those go right there, right at your shoulder. Another one. Have just a few more at the front. Boy, I did quite a number cutting this fabric, but still works. See, you're gonna have to stretch that just ever so slightly when you're in the sewing machine. So go ahead and stitch that 5/8 seam allowance all the way around. Do that now. Right? There's your neckband. Looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to serge this, and then I am going to stitch. So the neckband seam stays at the chest area versus the neck. All right, now that we are done with the neckline, we are gonna keep going, but I wanna mention something. With knits, anytime you're doing a knit and you are doing any horizontal stitches, you want to try to do either use an overlocker or a serger, or do a zigzag stitch, because you want to make sure that your garment is able to stretch, especially if you are going to pull this over your head. You want to make sure that those stitches are stretching and not breaking. So it's definitely very important that you do that. So we're going to put this aside because next the pattern calls for your sleeves. So go ahead and stitch your sleeves. Again, make sure that you match those notches, and then you're going to pin and stitch, and you are going to back stitch at the start and at the end, and then we're going to talk about gathers, because this sleeve is gathered and then we have that bigger cuff. So let's do that now. All right, so the pattern now calls for some gathering stitches. You see that notch there? We definitely want to gather the sleeve towards the side of the cuff, and we definitely want to go ahead and gather it. So I'm going to go ahead and do gathers for both sleeves, and I'm going to do 1¼ inch away from the edge, and then I'm going to do another one at 1/2 inch away from the edge, and I'm gonna go ahead and do my longest stitch on my machine is 4. So let's do that now. And you wanna start a little bit further away from the edge. And you do not wanna lock in your stitches, but you definitely wanna also leave your threads long because we're gonna pull on those threads. That's one row. We're gonna do another one. This one's going. All right. So now that we have our gathering stitches, we are going to gather. So grab 2 of those threads, right? And usually I take the ones from the top, and you're just going to pull on those threads and just keep moving your gathers about. I don't know if you saw it, but when I started stitching, there was a notch right in the middle. Let's see where it's at. I'm gonna find it. It's around here. It's right there. So we definitely want to make sure that that is in the middle of the cuff. So let's keep gathering. And don't be afraid to gather from both sides, right? Keep pulling. Keep pulling on your threads until you have some nice and even gathers. Right? Looks like I gotta pull a little more. Pull from both sides. And keep moving those gathers down the stitching line. Okay. Now that you have those gathers all set, and let's check on this. Let's check where my notch is. It's somewhere around here. It tends to get a little lost with all these awesome gathers, but it's right there. So I usually like to check, is it in the middle? Because remember, we have to match this to the notch on the sleeve. It needs a little more or a little less. Make sure that that is in the middle. So now that we did that, we are also going to gather the sleeve. So same way. Now we do this to ease. Usually I like to go ahead and do my gathers for the sleeve from notch to notch. Most patterns ask for you to do it from dot to dot, but I usually like to do it from notch to notch. It just gives me a nicer gather. So I usually do like 1/4 of an inch. Leave those threads long, leave those a little bit longer. And once you've done that, we're also now going to go ahead and lot of loose threads around here, but I promise you we will cut those once we are done. We'll go ahead and also stitch your sleeve together and match your notches. I'm going to pin this all the way down. And then I'm going to stitch this. I definitely need to lock in my stitches. So make sure that you set your machine again for 3 to 3.5 millimeters on your for your stitches. So do that now, and go ahead and set your machine 3.5. So now we have our sleeve gathers at the bottom, ready for our cuff. And we also have gathers at the shoulder. So once we set our sleeves, we can ease those in and just match our notches with the notches on the shoulder. So do that for both of your sleeves, and then we will set in the sleeves and do our cuffs. Do that now. All right, so now that we got our sleeves done and gathered, we're gonna go ahead and work on our cuffs. So go ahead and grab your cuff. I have one done here, but what you're going to do is you are going to, yet again, match those notches. I sound like a broken record, but definitely you have to do that with right sides together. Match your notches and then pin like I did here. And you are going to go ahead and stitch at 5/8 seam allowance, and then you're going to back stitch at the start and at the end. Do that for both cuffs. All right, so we got our sleeve done, we got our cuff done. So now we're right sides together. You're gonna slip your sleeve into your cuff, and you're gonna match your seams, right? Because we definitely want this to match. And then we're gonna match that notch that's somewhere around here. Here's this notches for my cuff, matches for the sleeve, right here. Okay, so pin those together because that means it's right on the middle. And then go ahead and pin your cuff all the way around, and then go ahead and stitch 5/8 seam allowance around, and definitely go slow. You're gonna have like a tighter area too, so you definitely want to take your time while you're doing this. So pin all the way around. Make sure you have raw edges with raw edges. Pin all the way around. So again, go ahead, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the start and at the end to lock in your stitches. Do that now. All right, so now we got our sleeves done. They're looking great. Seams are matching, gather's looking perfect. So go ahead and grab your bodice, and with right sides together, go ahead and slip your sleeve inside the armhole. And then you are going to go ahead and match those seams. find those notches yet again, right? So 1 notch means front, 2 notches mean the back. So that's why you definitely need to make sure you keep track of those notches, especially in your sleeves. Here's another one. Here's the one for the back. And then I also put another little point here, and that's my shoulder. And the pattern, it's a dot. So you're gonna have a couple of those. So again, that means your shoulder. And again, keep matching those. There is. And we did a little bit of etching of the sleeves. So definitely match that. Keep going around, pinning all around your sleeve. And do this for both sleeves. So go ahead and pin all the way around. And yet again, you are going to stitch 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on both sleeves. Take your time, maybe a little tight on your machine. So definitely go ahead and do that now. Do that for both sleeves. Take your time because you want to make sure that those seams and everything matches. All right, so we pinned our entire sleeve. Notches are matching, sleeves is matching, so go ahead and stitch 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. Now that you're done with your sleeves, all you have left is your hem. So the pattern calls for a 1-inch hem. So go ahead and definitely try your shirt on and see where you want it to end, and then go ahead and do your hem, and then you're all done.